Okay, let's do it.
Okay.
Don't accept mediocrity. Shoot for the stars, or you could do it anywhere in between. It's really up to you. People that have their own businesses will have to have that mindset. My father's vision really was, let's see who the best fighter is. Martial arts was so fragmented back then that this really kind of put them all together. Yes, it's a professional prize fight business, but there's something behind for me that's much deeper and much more spiritual than just being in a fight. Because you're a great fighter doesn't mean you're a martial artist. Don't mix the two up. I love this. They wouldn't have to pay me, I would still do it.
When it comes to fight promotion, there's not many men who have been there and done that. Old school OGs. Scott Coker is one of those men. I think he had his first fight that he promoted back in 1985. He was one of the pioneers when it comes to mixed martial arts with the Strikeforce organization in California and now with Bellator MMA. He did big things. He put on the very first women's MMA bout. He did an 8-man heavyweight tournament that included people like Fedor Emelianenko. Incredible things that he was a part of, and now he's doing even bigger things with Bellator. He's got fighters like Michael Venom Page, who's been our guest before, Alex Reed, Justin Wren, so many great names, and he's doing incredible things. But I was surprised to find out how much of a martial artist he really is. And you know, ask any fighter in the organization, they really love working with Scott because they feel like he's really about the arts and the promotion of MMA, and less so about the dollars. And you know, there really are two polar opposites, Dana White and Scott Coker. I respect both men immensely, but they're just very different in their approach to what they do. It's such an exciting time now with the UFC being sold for $4 billion and really MMA finally being recognized as a real sport with real potential. And I think Scott is the man for the job to run Bellator and do that for Viacom, which owns the whole company. It's a wonderful episode, and I think you're really gonna enjoy everything that's happening. And there's a lot happening inside London Real Academy this week. You know, we have our 4-week Create and Connect cycle, and it's just amazing. This week is the Dare Challenge. We ask you to do something that's just hard for you. That might mean jumping out of a plane. It might mean booking a public speaking exercise for yourself, or it might be something as simple as going up and talk to that guy or that girl that you've been avoiding. And all of these things, we believe small little changes make big differences in the long run. That's what London Real is all about. And if you want to watch those videos or see our crazy tribe inside, then come check us out. We'd love to have you be a part of it. And until then, enjoy Mr. Scott Coker.
Hey!
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Scott Coker, the president of Bellator MMA, the global mixed martial arts organization owned by Viacom. Before that, you were the founder and former CEO of the MMA promotion Strikeforce, which was sold to the UFC in 2011 and cultivated great fighters like Daniel Cormier, Ronda Rousey, and Robbie Lawler. You are here in London to promote Bellator 158, which takes place at the O2 Arena tomorrow, July 16th, and features our London Real guests, Michael Venom Page, Alex Reed. Scott, welcome to London Real.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure having you here. I'm always curious, when you fly into Heathrow and you're thinking about London when you're in the States, what are the kind of things that come to mind? Is it fighting? Is it culture? I'm always wondering what people think of us over here.
I tell you, it's a city that I love, and I love the people, I love the food, I love the shopping, and it just has such culture here compared to, the United States where, the city I live in, the town, it's actually a town, what's a city town, but it's has about 1 million people. It's in San Jose, which is a suburb of San Francisco, and Silicon Valley,
Yeah, of course.
But it was, it's only been there for 80 years. It's an 80-year-old city, if you think about that, or 100-year-old. Right. That's it. Before that, it was all orchards and all farmland. And so, to come to the UK or London and see, all the history here, it's quite amazing.
And there are real fight fans here. I'm wondering how the crowd feels. I was watching your press conference yesterday. Great press conference, by the way. You start pulling up Lennox Lewis and Tito Ortiz and Royce Gracie on stage, and and giving every fighter a chance to talk. It felt great. Good energy.
I'll tell you, I think it's important that everybody understand the history of the sport. And that really it was Royce Gracie's family that created the ideology of this fighting event. And I remember talking to Royce. He said the very first cage that they designed was like a Coliseum, right? It had like a Coliseum feel to it, more Roman, and it's like going into the gladiator pits to fight. And that's kind of what the very first, take of the UFC was, or MMA was, and then eventually evolved into the cage that you see today. But that represents the Coliseum in Rome. So, there's a lot of history. And Royce says to me, he says, this is what I'd like to say, is my father created MMA. That's how he feels. My father created this sport. Our family created this sport, but it's a sport, and no one can take that away from us, and my father's vision really was, let's see who the best fighter is. His father fought the Japanese Kimura.
Yeah, his
right?
Gracie fought
in the 50s, right?
Right.
I saw the T-shirt. I said, "What is this?" They go, "Oh, this is my father. This is, I forgot the first name, but Kimura's his last name, and they named the Kimura after this guy." And I was like, "Wow!" I go, "What happened?" He goes, "Oh, my father beat him." So I think he might have lost.
Yeah, I think he lost.
He lost a fight.
They fought on like a concrete floor somewhere.
Let's get it on,
Yeah.
And, but he was like, "Look, I want people to know that the Gracie family created this, and it's become this phenomenon worldwide. But the foundation is martial arts, and that's really important to him." And so, we invited him to come out and say a few words. And last time he was here, he said exactly what I was saying, was that, hey, my father's vision was, let's see who the best fighter is. And there's nothing wrong with competing to find out who the best fighter is.
Yeah. And for people that don't know, Royce Gracie fought at UFC 1, an organization which was created by Rorion Gracie. And Royce was the guy that tapped everyone out in those first few UFCs, to everyone's amazing. And so that later, was bought by the Tito brothers and became the organization we know. But having him on stage is like a way you're kind of paying respects to the lineage of the sport, right?
Yeah, and you know what? Tito Ortiz is a guy, the Huntington Beach bad boy. We brought him because I said, Tito, I think the fans want to see you and meet you and shake your hands and know that you're a real guy, and he's a nice kid, and he's done so much for the sport. I think to this day he's still the highest pay-per-view grossing fighter accumulative,
right?
In the history of MMA.
Yeah.
And he walks down the street, everybody knows who he is, right? He's that guy. And then we brought Lennox. Got introduced to Lennox by a friend, and I said, "Lennox, come down and check it out, Bellator." And people don't know, but he was a wrestler before.
I didn't know that.
He was a basketball player. He was a football player. He chose boxing because he thought he'd be really good at it, and he loved it. But he said, I could have done MMA because I was a wrestler too, and I could have learned how to do. And meeting him and seeing him and see how big he is.
Yeah.
I think he would have been a real force to deal with because that's a real physical specimen right there.
Yeah, you had him at the weigh-ins today, right? He's towering over some people right there.
Yeah, he's a big man, and so just think if he was a heavyweight fighting, could box like he boxes, can wrestle like he could wrestle, teach him some jiu-jitsu or anti-jiu-jitsu and how to block a leg kick, you're in business.
Yeah. So my first UFC was here in London, 2002, Royal Albert Hall. I think Tito might have been on that card. I'm not sure. Frank Mir fought on that card. It was like, and that was my first introduction. I got the bug. I ended up flying to Japan to see Pride Fighting Championships in kind of 04, 05. I went to Rio de Janeiro to train, ended up training with Bustamante.
Wow.
And so like, and I went back to Japan to watch him fight.
Wow.
And so like, I just started getting into it, but like, Tito was, Tito kind of was the UFC back in those early 2000s.
He was. I mean, him, Liddell, and Randy Couture.
Yeah.
That's who really built, in the 90s, into the early 2000s or maybe the mid 2000s. Those were the three guys that MMA rode their back, to the next level of success until they had different fighters that kind of came out, like the GSPs and Nick Diaz's of the world.
Yeah.
And that next group of people, but that group was really the one that really carried a lot of the burden.
Yeah, so I tell people you're in town, Scott Coker, and I'm saying, okay, it's Bellator is fighting on Saturday, and some people are like, well, is that the UFC? Is that Bellator? You must get this question all the time. And when you get it, what do you tell people? Like, we are this and they are that, or how do you explain Bellator?
You know what? I just say, look, MMA is a sport. They're one league, we're another league, and it's that simple. Because really that's what MMA is. MMA is a three-letter word, right? But it's not a three-letter word, if you know what I mean. It's really the sport. So the sport is mixed martial arts. And when I think back in martial arts when I was training in the late 70s and 80s, it truly was in San Francisco, which is a big hub for martial arts. The karate guy, the kung fu guy, the taekwondo guy, the judo guy, they all no one liked each other. And really, I am not kidding. People think it was a joke, but my style is better than your style. That was really the mentality back then. It was, your kung fu style is not as good as my, Shidokan karate style.
Right.
Or Seido Kaikan, or taekwondo, or jiu-jitsu. And that really was the mentality of martial arts back in the 70s. And when MMA came out, and Royce's father, he wanted to prove that jiu-jitsu was the style. And as the years progressed, the wrestlers came out, like we had talked about earlier. You had the Mark Colemans and the Kerrs, guys that could just take you down and just smash you, And did they have the skill that, maybe the Gracies did? No, but they had the power and the, wrestling is something that I did as a kid, in, 9th grade, 10th grade, and it was probably the hardest workout I've ever been through.
11th grade, I had my first season of wrestling.
So
oh my gosh.
It is the hardest workout, and these guys are so disciplined and just to persevere and grind it out, and so they were starting to win. And then the jiu-jitsu guys go, well, I better learn how to wrestle, right? And then comes along a guy named Maurice Smith, who's already a world champion kickboxer. And they're like, Maurice Smith, right? But he learned how to avoid the takedown, and he learned how to get back up from being taken down. And then he started knocking people out with kicks to the leg, kicks to the head. And it made people start saying, hey, I better do jiu-jitsu, I better wrestle, and I better do stand-up. And that has become the complete fighter that it is today. And a fighter like GSP is somebody I think of when I think that's the guy that came out of this. And the next generation are going to be fighters that do all the disciplines together. And really is the future of martial arts.
Right. When we saw GSP wrestle better than wrestlers, I think it was just Koscheck, where he was taking him down at will. And this is a guy who started off, a background like yours, more of, a karate background.
Right.
And all of a sudden he's doing these things. We're like, wow. And he's athletic and bringing that to the game. Yeah, where do you think it's going now? Now we see fascinating strikers like MVP, Conor McGregor talking about movement. Jose Aldo just got his interim belt back. I think he stood up the whole 5 rounds. Where do you think we're going?
I'll tell you, it's heading in the right direction because martial arts was so fragmented back then, back in the 60s and 70s and 80s, that this really kind of put them all together, And now the jiu-jitsu school says, I got to learn how to Thai box, and I better go learn how to strike. And the striker's saying, I got to go learn jiu-jitsu. And everybody's cross-training now. There's not a gym in this country that's a top gym, or in America too as well. There's not a top gym in the planet that is producing top talent that doesn't have a jiu-jitsu instructor that's teaching these guys and has a great striker, a great boxing coach, a great Thai boxing coach, a great wrestling coach. And you know, when you take it back to, for me, it's like the opening scene in Enter the Dragon, right? Open finger boxing gloves, the little shorts, the shin guards, right? Punching, kicking, throwing, grappling, submission. You know, Bruce was way ahead of the game. And so to me, that's where it's headed. It's heading in the right direction. And it's something where I feel like it's past the segregation of the 60s and 70s and 80s. And it's a more complete fighting system. It really has become a very effective fighting system where now it's like, if you're a great jiu-jitsu student or practitioner, and the other guy's a great jiu-jitsu practitioner, and you're a great wrestler, and he's a great wrestler, then you know what? It's going to come down to the striking. Who's the better striker? So they know. These guys know. I talk to them all the time. We got to have a complete game, and that's what's happening today. So it's a good thing.
Take me back 10 years, March 10th, 2006, HP Pavilion. You're looking over 18,265 fans. Shamrock Gracie, your first promotion in Strikeforce, is that right? What's happening in your brain and your body, and what led up to that, and what did that night mean for you and for the whole sport, really?
Yeah, you know what? It was an interesting time because that was still when MMA was kind of still like, is this going to really be around? And no one really knew. It was kind of like, you know, let's give it a try. Because I was in the kickboxing business before that, since '85 in San Jose. And California called me up, the State Athletic Commission, who governs our sport in California, calls me up and says, we're going to give licensing applications out for mixed martial arts. And this is probably 4 months prior to that. And I said, okay, well, you have to give me the first show. And they go, why? You know, because I've been a promoter here for 20 years. No one else has had a promoter's license in this state, the state of California, as long as I have had, so you have to give me the first show. And he said, okay, we'll give you the first show. So we set the date. And then I go, who's gonna fight? You know, and I had promoted all of Javier Mendez from AKA.
Yeah. All
his kickboxing fights, and he and I had been friends since we were like 20 years old, and I had known Crazy Bob, Frank Shamrock, you know, that whole group that was trained at AKA. So we were all friends, and so I asked, you know, Javier, what do you think? You know, who should fight? He goes, well, you should get Frank Shamrock to fight. So Frank and I were friends, so I met him at a Starbucks. I said, hey Frank, I got the first license. I want you to be the guy, you know, we should do this, you know. Like,
Frank hadn't fought in a while, right?
He had not fought in a while.
Yeah.
And so, you know, he's okay. And then, so who's the opponent, you know? And I'll be honest with you, I did not know MMA as well as I do today, right? Back then I was more of a kickboxing. And Javier says, go ask Cesar Gracie if he'll fight, you know? So we asked Cesar, he said, yeah. And I'm thinking in my head, great, I have a Shamrock versus Gracie promotion, right? And it was the first show, and I'll never forget it because, keep in mind, at that time in the United States, the mentality was, oh, you know, MMA is still a little bit taboo, and it wasn't on Showtime, it wasn't on CBS, it wasn't on Fox, it wasn't on, you know, Spike TV.
It was on Spike.
It was on Spike, sorry.
Was it on Spike at that point?
It was on Spike. It had just started Ultimate Fighter.
Okay,
you know, but it wasn't some, you know, like a built-up league for many years. It had just started. And so we had a press conference, and the questions that were coming at me were, well, you know, do you feel bad, like this is human cockfighting and you're contributing to, you know, these people going into a cage and they're, you know, it's like a car wreck, and, you know, you should be a member of this community. And I'm like, whoa, where is this coming from? And really I had to break it down. I said, look, this is a martial arts contest. These guys are skilled martial artists, and the choking, the submission, all the stuff that people, if you've never seen it before, you know, it can be uncomfortable for you, right? I said, all those techniques that you're talking about are completely legal in Olympic judo, right? You could armbar, you could choke, you could do all those techniques in Olympic judo. So, we didn't know that.
Right,
I go,
marketing problem.
Boxing, you can do in Olympics. Kickboxing, you can do all over the world. It's accepted everywhere. I go, and wrestling's in the Olympics, right? You put that together, that's what you're going to see, you know. And so it was a matter of education and educating the public and really getting it out there. But at first, the media was like, "Oh, this is terrible," and this is, you know. And you know, I remember that night or that day going into the fight, because we had only originally set up for like 7,000, 8,000 people. Because I said, Frank, I was sitting down with Frank, and I go, Frank, how many people do you think could come? Yeah, maybe 6,000, 7,000. So we set up for 7. I had no idea, and then we priced it for that, and then it started growing, and we're opening up sections of the building as we go. And then the day of the fight, I get a call from the arena, and they said, "You're sold out," you know. And I said, "What do you mean I'm sold out?" They go, "You're sold out." And I go, "Well, just open another section." They go, "No, you're like, we sold the whole thing, you know, 18,265." And I think the paid attendance was like 17,800 or something, which still holds the United States record for paid attendance in our country. Canada beat it with the big one at the big stadium. Yeah. But as far as in the United States, we still hold the record for paid. And so you walk into the stadium, man, there's 18,000 people there. You're just like, wow.
Your first promotion.
First MMA show.
That's crazy. I remember hearing those numbers and I was like, whoa, what's going on here? Because that's not 5,000 people. That's not 6,000 people. That's a movement. So you're on the map at this point.
Yeah. Yes, for MMA.
Right, and now for the next 5 years, you're competing with the UFC. But at the same time, you're breeding these stars that most people don't realize were created in Strikeforce. You know, guys like the current light heavyweight champion Cormier, Luke Rockhold, Rousey. People don't realize Ronda Rousey came from there. Verdum, right? A lot of these names.
Yeah, we had a heavyweight tournament that I'm really proud of. Something I'll never forget. Yeah. And it was the Strikeforce World Grand Prix heavyweight tournament. Right. And this was in 2010. Had Fedor Emelianenko, Alistair Overeem, Fabricio Verdum. We had Josh Barnett, Andrei Arlovski, and who else was in there? A couple other guys, but
I mean, Brett Rogers.
I mean, we had an amazing lineup, and something I was really proud of, because I think, when I look back at the Pride days, you know, they had all those great tournaments. I think this was right up there with them.
Yeah. No, it was epic.
It was Bigfoot Silva.
Yeah, Bigfoot, of course.
He beat Fedor in the very first fight.
He did, didn't he?
Yeah.
High points and low points in that organization. First of all, that heavyweight tournament, Fedor goes down. Were you completely shocked?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I grew up with Fedor in Pride. I mean, he was, 10 years undefeated? Yeah. Something crazy like that.
You know, it's funny, because Fedor and I are friends, and we talk, you know.
What's it like being friends with Fedor?
The conversations are very, how do you explain it? Like, because I don't speak Russian, he doesn't speak good English. So there's a lot of eating going on, a lot of drinking going on, and we're just hanging out. But he's a nice guy. He's a really, really gentle soul.
Spiritual guy, they say.
Really gentle soul. But when it's time to fight, you know, like, he could turn it on like nobody's business back when he was the king, you know. And but the fight with Bigfoot Silva, you know, I thought that, you know, that he could do it, you know. But I mean, he came into Strikeforce, and he fought Brett Rogers, and that was a great win for him. And then, you know, then he went to to kind of a losing streak, right? Of I think one was Fabricio Verdum, which I'll never forget that fight, because that's the first time he lost. Yeah. I'm sitting in San Jose. We probably had 14,000, 15,000 people there, and you know, it's funny, because Fabricio Verdum is negotiating with us the night before, going, "I need to change this deal. You know, I need to change this deal. Like, you need to help me here, because I'm fighting Fedor, and you know, and what if I lose? You know, you need to help me out, because like, I think in his mind he was already planning
retirement.
Yeah, like, I got to go to the next step of my career, and he's such a great guy too. Fabricio is just, you know, really, really quality individual. But he was already thinking, like, what if I lose to Fedor? Then, you know, what's going to happen? You know, are you going to cut me? Am I going to? And I said, don't worry, just fight. You know, and then he wins, and I'm not kidding. People were standing up. I'll never forget. I looked over at all the M1 guys, you know, that were managing Fedor, and they just looked like they lost their puppy, you know. And I'm looking around, everybody's just shocked, like, what just happened? You know, like, this is not supposed to happen.
Yeah, it's
right?
not supposed to happen.
And
as a promoter, does that make your heart sink a little bit?
Of course, yeah, because, you know, with Fedor, he was, you know, a guy that we were paying a lot of money to at the time, and you had a lot of high hopes for the future with him at that point. But I do understand that fighting is fighting, and anything can happen. So, Fedor ran to a little bit of a streak there with us, and then he's then eventually he moved on and went back to Russia to fight, and then he just fought with one of some legends or something.
Yeah, someone.
So he fought recently, and but having him out here, I love it because the fans just like people just walking around, that's Fedor, I mean, just on the street, just like walking around, London, people are like, there's Fedor. So people know who he is. He's still a brand name, and I think that he deserves all the respect, all the accolades, because he's given so much to MMA.
Yeah.
And if you look back, and martial arts is like, if you look back at the history of the sport, at one time he was unbeatable. He was the king. No. When Lennox Lewis saw him, he said, "I gotta shake your hand. You are the." He just went off on Fedor and Fedor's like, "Who is this guy?" I go, "That's Lennox Lewis. He's a very famous boxer from here, heavyweight champion, beat Mike Tyson." I go, "Oh, he beat Mike Tyson." So, but he didn't even know who Lennox was. But Lennox was like, "You're the man in MMA," because he remembers old fights back in the day, and he was a killer back then.
What were low points of Strikeforce? Was it the Diaz fight in the cage? Was that a low point? Was that just a media event?
You know what? I'll tell you. That was really an unfortunate situation, and I'll never forget it. And Mayhem Miller goes into the cage,
right?
And I was left to go to the press conference because the fight was over. I'm heading.
You would left to go to the press conference, okay?
So I'm walking through the alleys of the arena. I didn't see it, and this is live on CBS, right?
Right. So people don't know, it was one of the Diaz brothers fighting, or one of their guys was fighting. I think
it was Jake Shields.
Yeah, Jake Shields, and
fighting Dan Henderson.
Right, Dan Henderson. Shields had won.
Shields had fought. Shields won, and he had fought Mayhem Miller in the past.
Right.
So Mayhem goes, "Let's go do it again," and this is really Jake Shields' time where he gets the mic, and this is his time. Yeah. This isn't so Mayhem's stealing his thunder.
Right. This is before Mayhem got super crazy in his life, but he was already crazy.
He was already crazy.
Right, okay.
But then he took it to a whole nother level. But he was manageable crazy. But so he goes in there, and when I look at the tape, I'm like, you have Nate Diaz, and Gilbert Melendez there, and you didn't think anything was going to happen? Like, are you serious?
Yeah.
And that's what I told him that night. I said, "Are you kidding me? You got the Diaz brothers and Gilbert, along with Jake and their whole crew, and you don't think anything was going to happen?" Because, well, I didn't think they're going to jump me. That's what his response was. I said, I don't want to talk to you right now.
Right, so we're live on television, CBS, right?
CBS, yeah.
And that was a big coup as well. You're on CBS, that's big.
Yeah.
And then it's after the fight, kicks off in the cage. Miller, we don't know what happened. Looks like Nick got a shot in, but Gilbert, and everyone jumps on everybody, and it's quite a little brawl there.
Yeah.
Is there any good side to that media event, Scott?
Boy, that's a tough one because, if you look at the social impressions, I'm sure they're in the millions.
Yeah.
But that's not how you want your brand represented. I think Strikeforce was doing such a good job and, doing some great fights. I mean, think of the fights that we put together. There was no female division in the sport outside of Strikeforce, right? Gina Carano fighting Cyborg was the first female MMA headliner of, I think, ever. We had 13,000, 14,000 people in the stadium. I think it did like 1.3 million on Showtime, which they're in a 25 million universe, so it's a big number for them. One of the highest. It was the highest rated show in MMA on Showtime until Kimbo came, and who came after? Fedor came. When we showed up after.
Right.
But they were. And then we did Fedor fighting Fabricio Verdum. Kung Lee fighting Frank Shamrock was probably the loudest I've ever been in a stadium.
Right, because they love Kung in San Francisco, right?
Yeah, it's half and half. It was like was like the hometown rivalry, with two pretty big names, and Shamrock was still a big deal. Kung, very big deal in the San Jose area, and we had I think 15,000, 16,000 people. And I think we're the only company at the time to do over $1 million gates outside the UFC. So these were big stadium fights with big Major League Television, great sponsorship with Rockstar and EA Sports at the time. And, so we had this emerging business that was really starting to take off.
2011, bought by the UFC. Mm-hmm. How does that moment feel for you?
Well, I think that most people, when they say, "Oh, I sold my business," they're, "Hey, congratulations, high five," right? For me, it was, I had taken an investment partner in to buy Pro Elite. Pro Elite spent $60 million, starting to go down, going into bankruptcy. So I go, okay, I got to go buy Pro Elite because there was a lot of fighter contracts in there. They had the CBS Showtime deal. So this is before I got on major television like that. So I took a partner in the San Jose, the guys that own the San Jose Arena had a financial group called Silicon Valley Sports and Entertainment. And for 2 years that we were doing business, they say, "Hey, would you consider an equity stake and us buying in?" I'm like, "No, I don't really need a partner." Well, now I needed a partner. So I said, "Okay, you guys buy in. We'll go buy Pro Elite," which we did. That's how we got the CBS and Showtime deal. That's how we got some of the fighter contracts. And then we took off from there. So now you have a partner, right? And so when I think about, bittersweet moment, it was the sale of the company because there's a lot of other circumstances which would take much longer to explain and get into. But at the end of the day, it was, you have a partner that said, "Hey, this is a great deal."
It's not just your call, is what you're saying.
That's right. Yeah. This is a great deal. And, either two things were going to happen. One, I was going to end up with a disgruntled partner, right? Or I was going to have to go find another partner to buy them out. But the deal was going down so fast, right? I had to make a decision. And so I said, okay, it's time to let it go because I didn't want to end up with a partner that was going to be disgruntled because it wouldn't have worked. I would have been in a bad marriage, and so, but it wasn't, let me tell you, it was not a time of happiness for me when you have to sell, basically it's like selling your kid, because you put so much of your heart and soul into it. And so it wasn't that moment for me.
Yeah, and you live that business, and you're known as the guy that all the fighters want to work for. Everyone knows that in the inside of the industry. And so when you took over Bellator, all the fighters came out and were like, "We can't wait to start working with Scott." And so, you have that martial art spirit about you, I think. So I could see how walking away from those relationships, I even see how you talk about Fedor and all these people. I mean, this was personal for you, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's, they become like your family, and, we don't have 500-600 fighters in a contract. We have 150. And the top guys, most of them I have good relationships with. And I try to, and reach out and talk to them and really stay connected. Because for me, this is not just about fighting and prize money and promotion, right? To me, this is part of my martial arts journey, as I grew up through the martial arts school and learning. Making a decision when I was 16 years old, I wrote a mission statement. And the mission statement was, I'm going to make a contribution to martial arts, for the rest of my life, and this is what I'm going to do. And my mom, she was very much, no, you're not going to be a karate mom. That's not going to happen. You're going to go to school like your brother, and you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer, or And my brother didn't make it easy because he's a guy that was my older brother. He's had a master's degree at USC at 22, Fulbright music scholar, brilliant guy, and had a PhD, became a professor at UCLA. Then eventually when it got out of music, became a lawyer. Now he's running a film fund out of LA. So that was, one path, a traditional path. I went for what I really love to do and really focus on the love of martial arts. And so to me, that's really the direction I had. I said, no, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to be a martial arts teacher. I want to go teach martial arts. I want to spread the word of martial arts because, like you had mentioned something to me earlier, and I don't hear this very often, and it was, because you're a great fighter doesn't mean you're a martial artist. Don't mix the two up. One teaches great life skills of character and respect, indomitable spirit, perseverance. Those are life skills that, I used to teach to children that were 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 12, that was one of the joys of my life because you see your education impacting those kids, right? And, so I went through the point when I had some schools and then I started this fight business when I was 21 years old. Then I bought another school, and I had 2 schools. I was running this back and forth. Then I accepted a contractor gig with K1 to help them run their fights in Vegas. And so, I mean, my whole life has just been about the contribution to martial arts. So to me, this is the same thing as, yes, it's a professional prize fight business, but there's something behind it for me that's much deeper and much more spiritual than just being in a fight, a fight business. So
right. It's not just about the bucks for you.
It's not just about the money.
Right. Now, your counterpart in this entire fascinating drama is Dana White at the UFC, who is probably more on the dollar side of the spectrum. Now, look, Dana's made amazing contributions, done incredible things, but he's a very different personality than you. He has different relationships with the fighters than you do. And the business was just sold a couple weeks ago, $4 billion price tag.
Yep.
What do you make of all that? I mean, you've been in the business for a long time. You've sold your organization. You've merged with other organizations. What's the first thoughts that come to your mind when you first hear about the deal, and now a week later you've had time to digest it? What does it make you think?
Well, it's a big number, right? It's the largest sale of a sports franchise in the history of the world in sports. I mean, there hasn't been, the New York Yankees haven't been sold for this kind of money, or the LA Lakers couldn't sell for that kind of money. But, from a financial standpoint, I look at what are the basketball teams worth after the Clippers got bought for $2 billion by the gentleman from Microsoft, right? All the teams' values went up. So from a financial standpoint, from Viacom, who owns Bellator, they could look at it and say, well, our valuation just went up. And I told them, I said, you know what, guys? You should be celebrating along with Lorenzo and popping that champagne along with him, because Bellator's value just went up big time. Because now you have the respectability and the credibility of being in a sport and have the investment community saying, you know what, this is something that could be valuable and built up to be a multi-billion-dollar business. And that says a lot, that they proved that this is possible, and they set the benchmark. And they worked hard. I mean, I've saw from the very beginning when he first came in, I'm talking about Lorenzo, and it was Dana's vision, but Lorenzo was the one that financed it. And I saw him come in. I was in Japan for K1, stayed after, and Mr. Ishii, who owned K1 at the time, and myself, and Frank Shamrock and Javier Mendez were going to start an MMA league. So I stayed, and he says, hey, the UFC's in town, right? I said, oh, let's go. Because I'm a fan. I mean, it's not like if I watch boxing, I can't watch mixed martial arts. If I watch kickboxing, I can't watch, I watch it all. I watch Pride, I watch, I was like that junkie guy that loved everything. And so he's at this, and it was at a little hall with 1,500 people there, right? It was a little nightclub, actually.
It's like UFC Japan.
It was UFC in Japan.
Right, okay.
Right. So it was UFC Japan, the second one.
Second one, okay.
And Tito Ortiz fought, Vanderlei Silva fought, I don't know if Lydell fought, Boss Root may have fought, Randy Couture fought. I mean, it's like all the big names, right? And really, it's like 1,500 people in there. And it was a tiny little show. This is probably 2000, maybe 2001. And in walks Lorenzo Fertitta. And how I knew him was, hey, he sits on the athletic commission board in Nevada. So I knew he was, what's he doing here? And, and I didn't know Dana at all. So they walked in, and then there's little talk, oh, they're going to buy the UFC, they're going to buy the UFC. And sure enough, so they buy the UFC. And that was a pivot point, because honestly, MMA was going to die at that point. It could have died. People that love martial arts and love MMA should really thank Lorenzo for his contribution, because he put his money where his mouth is and invested in the sport and really saved it from the demise where, Senator McCain was saying this is human cockfighting. Time Warner, all the cable networks, the cable, systems were saying we're not airing MMA anymore because you guys are billing it as human cockfighting, and there's no weight classes, there's no rules. They're advertising it as no hold bar, right? And so they're marketing it like it was just some street fight, that people are gonna get hurt in. And then that happened. So that was one of the points that saved MMA.
Yeah. Do you think if Lorenzo hadn't stepped in then, that you and I wouldn't even be talking about MMA?
We wouldn't be talking about MMA.
Really?
I really believe
That's
that.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So the sport wouldn't exist as we know it.
It would not exist today. And we should be thankful for that, because honestly, they sold for $4 billion, but they created a multi-billions of dollars of industry.
Yeah.
You know, because what did it do to all the MMA schools around the country? What did it do to all the jiu-jitsu schools around the country?
Right.
Think about that.
It's probably created 20, 30, 40, $100 billion worth of value.
Easily.
Yeah.
So, you know, they bring the awareness. And the other point was, the sport almost died was when, you know, they're trying to get a TV deal, and Kevin Kay from Spike TV, you know, who still runs Spike TV today, and loves MMA. I mean, this guy loves it. I mean, he's emailing me at 2 a.m. Did you see this article on so? I'm like, no, I'm about to go to sleep, so I'll look at it tomorrow. But on a serious note, he loves, like, he watches all the fights and he loves it. And, you know, he finally said, okay, we'll give you a shot to get on Spike TV. And so if that never happened, if Kevin didn't give them the shot, I think that it could have been game over at that time because they had hemorrhaged so much money. So those are the 2 points I think MMA could have died. And luckily it didn't, because look at it today. Now it's thriving. Now you have big stars filling big arenas. Yeah, you know, this has been a record year for Bellator as far as ratings, as far as paid live attendance, international distribution, sponsorship, the blue chip sponsors we have today with Light Beer from Miller, Dave & Buster's, Monster Energy Drink. I mean, you know, it's a solid business. So I don't think all that happens without those 2 moments working out the way that it did.
Which was all about really putting a lot of cash on the table. You know, whether it was the initial investment of a few million or the later 50 or 60 million, putting it in and really believing it and making both of those 2 little inflection points happen, which they could have been missed.
That's right. And if one of those missed, game over. I really believe
for
it.
everyone.
Game
That's
over.
fascinating.
Yeah.
What's your read on Dana White? You've known him for a long time. You worked with him for 3 years at UFC.
Right.
You competed against him at Strikeforce. Yeah, he was fighting against you guys. And now you compete with him now. I mean, overall, you know him better than I will, or probably anyone else. What's your read?
You know, I look at it differently. And I've always said this because what he's doing and what we're doing, we're trying to help the same industry, right? We're lifting the industry. And so, yeah, they're doing a major part. We're doing our part. And collectively, we're growing the value of MMA, and we're growing MMA to the next level. But, you know, it's like when we had Strikeforce, he was, Strikeforce, you guys, you know. But before that, he was like, Strikeforce is the place to be, and, you know, this is a great organization, this is how you run things. And then he started coming after us after we signed Fedor, you know. So
right.
I go, okay, I understand. This is like a personal thing because they wanted to sign Fedor, and then we did it. And then he started coming after us. But when I knew, like, it's like I don't want to say it's, you know, the cameras are rolling, but I would see him after the thing. He goes, hey, you know, nothing personal, you know, just everything's fine, you know, we're all good. I said, listen, we're good. You know, it's
just business.
It's just, listen, it is what it is. You have to go do what you have to do, and I'm just like, hey, thanks for tuning in, thanks for watching, you know, but it was never anything personal for me, like, oh, I'm going to be mad at Dana. I mean, listen, what they've done for the sport, you know, has been monumental, and what he's going to continue to do for the sport is going to be, you know, fantastic, because he loves what he's doing, I believe. And, you know, when you love something, it's not about the cars or the house, or, you know, you're passionate about it, and he's passionate about it. But, you know, we had like these little conversations in the hallways when I was at UFC, and you know, it was just great having those little moments. Hey, how's your family? You know, everything good? You know, it was nothing to do about fighting or martial arts. And I found him to be, you know, pretty nice guy, really. You know, I guess what I'm saying is the character that I saw out on TV was not the guy that I got to know inside the company. You know?
Right, but he does have a different relationship with the fighters than you do. Mm-hmm. It's a different organization, but he always has, and I believe he is passionate about fighting, but I wouldn't know if he's passionate about martial arts the same way you are.
Right.
And it's just, it's slightly different with Dana, I believe.
Right. Yeah, and you know, I can't really respond to that because, you know, I don't really know how he interacts with his guys. I hear a lot of things, but, you know, I haven't really seen it, so it's hard for me to comment on, you know, what his relationship is like. And, you know, I do know that they have a pretty big roster, and to maintain that roster is probably a lot of work. And there's a certain bandwidth that you have every day, and I'm sure that you know, he hangs out with the fighters he likes, and once he doesn't, he doesn't. So, you know, it just is what it is.
What changes from here on out? You know, WME has bought this company. Dana stays on. Sounds like he's got a profit-sharing deal. Rumors of 9% he gets of the revenues, similar to his 9% equity stake he had in the company, which sounds like it keeps him happy, keeps him in there. Be interesting to see if he has the control that he did, or the control we perceive that he did. What do you think happens in the next couple of years with the UFC? How do we feel it's different?
Well, you know, it's going to be interesting because, you know, Lorenzo Fertitta is, you know, a very sharp business guy and really grew the international side of this business, you know, to be a big piece of business for the company. And loved, you know, loved his company, loved martial arts. So I think you take a guy like that out, I think that you better fill somebody back in that has the same skill set, you know, to run it. And that's going to be key, is who is that guy? Is it going to be Dana stepping in as, you know, CEO, president? I don't know. But, you know, that's going to be a void that's, I think it's going to have to take a real sharp guy to step in there and really take the reins of that company and take it to the next level.
Right.
Continue watching this fascinating conversation for free by clicking on the link below to visit our website, and I'll see you on the inside.
But it just says mastery.
Mastery.
Right.
Wow. It's on your wrist.
Because every day I wake up and I go, this is what I'm shooting for, is mastery. Like, stay true to who you are and work your butt off, man.